Greetings and salutations, everyone. You're listening to Mama Rue's Ancestral Musings. This is a podcast about all things Blackness with an ancestral point of view. How you doing? Man, I'm just loving the summertime. It's for real summer here where I am in Chicago. We had a couple of cold days recently, but that's just typical for this neck of the woods. I hope you guys are doing well wherever you are. Shout out to all the growers. Shout out to all the farmers. Okay, keep that green stuff coming up. Yes, it's so important to connect with nature. And it's truly a blessing to be able to grow your own food, your own medicinal herbs, your own magical herbs and roots and things. Ain't nothing better than that. Today's topic is Hoodoo as Religion, ? But before we get into the topic, I want to give a couple of shout outs. First and foremost, shout out to It's Juju Bay of Instagram and Twitter, the gorgeous hostess of A Little Juju podcast, available on iTunes podcasts over at Apple, also available on SoundCloud, I believe. I listen to it through iTunes. And man, if you haven't listened to A Little Juju podcast, then what are you doing? Seriously, what are you doing? It is such a great podcast. And I, yours truly, was a guest on A Little Juju podcast, and I had a ball chatting it up about Black spirituality with Juju over there. And shout out to all my new followers and new listeners who found me thanks to listening to A Little Juju podcast. Also want to give a shout out to the gorgeous, the beautiful, the magical, the powerful Hoodoo Hussy, my spiritual sister from social media. She's from the East Coast and she came to town, got a chance to link up and be in her presence. And man, sis is larger than life. Okay. She has such an amazing presence. She has, the gift and the privilege to be a burlesque artist. And what I love about her art, which sadly I have yet to see in person, but she shares videos and photos from her burlesque art performances. And she does a lot of showcasing the divine feminine, okay? A lot of her art is centered around Black powerful women, such as Josephine Baker, Zora Neale Hurston. I think recently her group did some work inspired by Beyonce, Rihanna, It's great. It's just a wonderful, wonderful medium, in my opinion, to showcase the divine feminine. So if you aren't following Hoodoo Hussy on Instagram, make it your business to do so and get a little bit of that Black magic going on over there with her. All right. So let's get into this. Hoodoo as a religion? Why, yes. Yes, indeed. Now, a little while ago, I said I was going to review this book, Working Conjure, and I decided not to do it because I don't really want to use my podcast to review books that I could not wholeheartedly get behind and recommend to you guys. And the reason why I can't get behind that book is because of a couple of things. The position that the author takes, saying that hoodoo is not a religion, it's not a spiritual path, nor a tradition, it's just a system of folk magic with European and Native American influences, and, that's all it really is. That does not sit well with me because it's not true. All right? It's not true. Hoodoo is a religion. It is a spiritual path. It is a spiritual tradition. It is not going to be just diminished to a bag of tricks that anybody can get hold of. All right? If we're going to be real about this, what is hoodoo? It's us, Black folks. It's you and me. Okay? The Black American experience in its entirety is hoodoo. Well, how can I say that when the majority of Black folks in this country are church-going Christians or indoctrinated Christians? Okay? Because there's a difference between the two. All of us, it doesn't matter what our beliefs are. We're all hoodoo. Okay? Listen, try as they might, indoctrinated Christians, the ones that look at root work and conjure and all that as something bad and something wrong and something evil, that's about all they can do is talk. Because if we get down to what's underneath, if we get down to the marrow of every Black American individual, hoodoo is there. The ancestors don't care what people say. They don't care what people do. They don't care about people's unwillingness to embrace their ancestral truth. That doesn't stop them from living on in each and every one of us. Okay? So no matter how afraid of this thing those Black Christians are, or, how discouraged or dismayed they are, that so many of us are returning to our ancestral truth and we're embracing it unapologetically and unafraid, they're still a part of this. Okay, we all share the same ancestors. We all share the same history. Hoodoo is us. Okay? In the past, I've said things like, hoodoo is in everything we do. Juju is in everything we do. You just can't take it out of Black culture. You can't. Okay, so when people try so so diligently to pick apart our magical traditions and separate it from ourselves, you're gonna have to take a whole lot more than that. Okay, because all of our existence, all right, going back to our first ancestors of this land, hoodoo was what allowed our people to survive the most impossible circumstances. If you took any other people without what we have and put them in the same positions, in the same circumstances that our first ancestors of this land had, they wouldn't have made it past the first generation. They would not have. And the second generation would have been born with so much weakness that they probably would have died out without being able to procreate. And we just would have been poof, okay, gone. But there was something about us, okay? When you consider that only a third survived the trip over here from Western Central Africa, okay, what does that say about the ones who did survive? All right, they had something going on, and that something is hoodoo, okay? It's hoodoo. It's the tenacity, the will to survive. Every impossible thing that was thrown at our ancestors, we have the audacity to survive that. And that's what we come from, you and I. Okay? Why is it then? Here we are, in the 21st century, and we're still being oppressed, right? We're still being hated on. We're still being disenfranchised. We still have the most blatant injustices happening to us. Okay? Our children grow up seeing trauma that they should not see, the same types of trauma that other people would not be able to sustain, okay, and be healthy. So we go through so much adversity, but at the same time, we're able to express so much joy, so much creativity, so much sheer willpower, so much excellence, so much brilliance, so much genius. We're still creating kick-ass art. We're still innovating and improving on other things. Listen, whenever there's something trendy going on, Black folks, you can always leave it to us to take it and put our Black ass spin on it and make it our own. And a lot of people look at it and go, oh, that's so ghetto. That's the first thing they say. Oh, that's so ghetto. We trick out everything, okay? And we do it so well. We trick out our hairstyles, our makeup styles, what we do with our fingernails, how we adorn ourselves, our cars, our bikes, even our gardens, okay? And it's all coming from the same place, hoodoo, okay? When you look at traditional African cultures, adornment is a huge thing. It's not just about self-expression. It's showing the world who you belong to and who you be. Okay, it's very tribal centered and tribal oriented. And that's what we do. We're the tribe of hoodoo. And this is what we want the world to see about us, who we are and what we're representing. Listen, it's no, big stretch when we say several different tribes of Africans were thrown together on those slave ships and brought here, and were forced to cohabitate, were forced to work together, were forced to witness the same types of things together and share the same experiences. Now, these people might have hated each other prior to that boat trip, but when they got off those boats, we became a new tribe. Shout out to my brother, Robert Lucas, for bringing that to my attention years ago. And it was so profound and so deep. Okay. I really felt it in my soul when he uttered those words to me. And it's true, y'all. We are a new tribe. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean we can't honor the bloods that come from our motherland. Okay. The Bantu, the Hausa, the Yoruba, the Fon, the Yue, the Dahomey. Okay. And all the others that make us us. Okay, shout out to everybody that got their DNA done so they can, research those countries that their ancestors come from. Cameroon, Benin, Gambia, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, and elsewhere. That's cool. But at the same time, we can also celebrate that we belong to a whole different tribe of Black people in the diaspora. We are Hoodoo. Think about that. Some folks, not everybody, but some folks in the continent, oftentimes the name of their people will also be the name of the dialect they speak, and will also be the name of their culture, including their religious practices, okay? They're all given that one name. So who's to say we can't do the same? We have our own way of speaking. We have our own dialects here. Okay, and I'm so proud that more and more of us are embracing that, okay? Because even myself, I was raised that, speaking proper English, American Standard English, was the best way to go, okay? But yet I'm growing up around a lot of folks in my family that speak a little differently. And now, sadly, a lot of those folks have passed on, and man, I would give anything to hear those dialects again, okay? It would be music to my ears. And so all this pressure to assimilate and be like them, the majority, that was a real thing for me growing up. But as I got older, I'm like looking around and I'm like, why do I have to be like them? Them that hate me and people who look like me. Them that did so much fuck shit to people that look like me, and basically fuck shit to anybody that didn't look like them. Okay? Like, why am I trying so hard to be the devil? That's not right. That makes no sense. The way we speak at home and in private amongst our family and friends, that needs to be respected out in these streets. Okay? That needs to be respected on the mainstream, because it's our shit. Okay, to me, there's no honor in speaking proper American Standard English. It is the tongue of our oppressors. So to me, speaking Hoodoo, which folks want to call AAVE, they want to call it Ebonics, Hood Speak, Ghetto Talk, whatever you want to call it. To me, it's a badge of fucking honor. That's saying you're going to respect me and you're going to respect the people that made me possible. Okay? So I'm loving that more and more of us are embracing our tongues, the way those early ancestors spoke, and way some of y'all's ancestors may still speak, and your elders mainly, okay, your people, because it's beautiful. It's not ugly. It doesn't mean, you're lacking education, you dumb, whatever the case may be. All right? Free your tongue. It's liberation. All right? So we're collectively moving to this place of African identity. All right? A lot of folks are using spirituality to do that, and I think that that is great. But at the same time, it also makes me a little sad when I see individuals just jump over their immediate ancestors and start holding up, other cultures' ancestors, because a lot of folks don't even know if they do truly have ancestors that might be, case in point, Yoruba, right? Or Igbo. I'm talking about Nigerians, right? You don't even know if that's in your bloodline. But one of the things that's taught, is to elevate the ancestors and to do it in those tongues. Okay? Just a little thing that my ancestors brought to my attention kind of recently. I don't speak Lingala or Kikongo, because a good portion of my African ancestry is Congo Bantu, okay? And I don't speak any of the Bantu tongues, but I have ancestors that had to learn English, whose mother's tongues were Bantu languages. So those are my translators, okay? Would I love to be able to learn and speak and read their original tongues? Absolutely. And I aim to do so, okay? But that doesn't mean that I'm lacking something in my ancestral reverence because I don't know their words. I don't know their speech. I don't know their dialect. My ancestors know, okay? And if they can carry my messages in English back to their ancestors in their tongues, then I got it made in the shade. And so do you, okay? So do you. So getting back to this whole thing about, is this religion? All right. Now I already spoke about the church. All right. The indoctrination and the religious doctrine and the teaching and all like that goes on in Black churches, that's all fine and good, because if they were talking about anything else, they'd get shut down. Right? Right. Of course they would. So they have to go along with that. But that doesn't mean that everybody sitting in those pews is actually going along with that. As a matter of fact, a huge number of Black folks are not indoctrinated Christians. They're church goers. There's a difference. Okay? There's a difference. Just like you can be a vegetarian and go to the steakhouse, right? Just because you're sitting in the steakhouse doesn't mean you're going to eat meat. You've got plenty of non-meat food options in the steakhouse, right? So you get those, right? You eat that, what is acceptable to you, the vegetarian, or maybe even some vegan things, maybe, and you leave the rest, right? That going there doesn't make you a meat eater. You're still a vegetarian, right? So when we go to church to get our, praise on, all like that, we're going there to experience the African spirit. How is that even possible? Well, I'll tell you. We may have forgotten our African ancestors, but baby, they have never forgotten about us. And that is why when we go to the Black praise house, when we go to the Black church, the African spirit is alive and well. I've seen it all my life in my experiences going to Black churches and even revival tent services, alive and well, okay? It's unique to us. Why? Okay? Because like I said, they couldn't kill what can never die. So I don't care what anybody says. They read and are beholden to the Bible word for word. This and this and this will get you, a fast track ticket to hell, nonstop express, this and that, all that scary ass woo-woo shit. That's, we hear a lot of Black Christians say about our tradition, our religion. But they never stopped doing the work. They just use different words for it. They still use the washes. They still use the holy oil to anoint. They still get the ghosts, really. It's being mounted by our egungun, but whatever. And they want to call it the Lord. They still have the gift of sight. They can still prophesy, but they call it a gift from God. They know how to heal people. Okay, either through prayers or the laying on of hands. They call that all God's work. All right. But how is that any different from what our African ancestors did prior to enslavement? There's no different. The only thing that's different is the perspective and the semantics. That's it. That's all. All right. So no, we're all hoodoo. It doesn't matter what religion we want to cling to. It doesn't matter what words we want to use over others. It doesn't matter how we navigate this world. It doesn't matter what our indoctrination is, or those of us who don't have indoctrination, how we view those who do. None of all that matters, y'all. The truth is, hoodoo is alive and well because we are. As long as we exist, hoodoo exists. And to take certain parts of our hoodoo out and just try to diminish them to simple trick work, that's a travesty. Okay? Because it's a lie. Our juju is in everything that we do. Okay? There are people who can use the power of prayer and pray you 6 feet under. Okay? Harriet Tubman is a great example of that. Okay? When she found out her master was going to try to split up her family and sell her to this other one that was known to be really, really cruel, she made prayers to God and said, God, bind this man's hand. Do not let him sell me away. Short time after that, she saw her master drawing up the sale papers to sell her and her family off to this cruel dude. So she changed her prayer. And she said, Lord, this man's going to try to sell me to that cruel master. Just go ahead and move him on out the way. And guess what? That man fell down dead. Her master fell down dead before that transaction could be completed. And her family was able to stay together. Okay? Now, she attributed it to God because she was a Christian. But those of us who know what really happened there. That was hoodoo. Okay? That was hoodoo. And that is why so many people are gifted with the power of prayer. Okay? Some of us can make prayers and nothing much happens. But then we have these individuals that are gifted with the voice boxes that can utter prayers and make shit move. All right? Look at Frederick Douglass. In Frederick Douglass's autobiography, he makes mention of a conjureman named Sandy. Now, Frederick Douglass, like Harriet Tubman, was also a Christian. Okay? And he had heard about Sandy, but he didn't really believe in all that hocus pocus mumbo jumbo for himself, being a Christian. Now, he was treated real bad by this cruel overseer. Okay? Really, really evil booklet. This guy would beat and torture poor young Frederick any chance he could get, so badly that one day Frederick wanted to run away. Now, this all happened in Maryland. I can't remember the name of the plantation or where exactly it was in Maryland, but his designs were on running away to Baltimore. Okay? So he sat out in the woods by himself, thinking about his plan to Baltimore and, when's the best time to act and maybe, what he could get into while he was there and so on and so forth. And Conjureman Sandy happened upon him. He said, what are you doing here, sitting here all by yourself, young Frederick? And he told the conjureman that he was contemplating moving away. He told him about all the grief he was getting from that old cruel white overseer. So conjureman Sandy said, well, here, you put this root in your right pocket. And I'm telling you now, you'll never have problems from that man no more. And Frederick thought to himself, well, what have I got to lose? I mean, I don't really believe in this, but he's giving it to me. What have I got to lose? So he took the root, put it in his right pocket. And after that cruel overseer did not bother him no more. And he wondered about that. And he said, I just can't understand it. This root came from a flower that I walk across every day in the woods. It has flowers that can only be seen in the morning. How could something so simple and so ubiquitous be that powerful? Okay? And of course, when I read that, the ancestors actually brought me to that, okay? I went in my library looking for a different book to help someone with something, and that book just fell off my case. And I picked it up, and I read those words from Frederick Douglass. And at that time, I asked the ancestors, what's really going on with this John the Conqueror root? Okay, how is it that John the Conqueror root comes from jalapa, which is indigenous and grown in Mexico? Okay, I asked my ancestors to give me the answer. When I saw that book, I got my answer. Okay, did you catch it? When Frederick Douglass said, how could something so powerful come from a flower that he's seen, that he stepped over every day, whose flowers were only visible during the morning? What plant is that, y'all? Okay, that's right. You are correct. Exactly. All right. John the Conqueror. John the Conqueror's root is the tuber of the morning glory, a.k.a. the wild sweet potato. Okay? And it's grown in certain parts of North America, particularly where there are enslaved people. They didn't need no root from no Mexico. It was right here. It has a different species name. It isn't jalapa. Okay? But that's the true John the Conqueror root. So here you have these two Christian people, very devout, I might add, who had hoodoo. Frederick Douglass was using one of the most important hoodoo saints that helped him with his oppression. Okay? So again, it doesn't matter the mindset. It doesn't matter the mentality. It doesn't matter the level of indoctrination. It doesn't matter, y'all. We are hoodoo, no matter which way you slice it. Okay? So a lot of us, we need to really kind of dial back our criticism and our negative attitudes and judgments about our church-going black folk, especially our ancestors that were church-going black folk, okay? Because they knew what they were doing, all right? Auntie Bertha knew what she was doing, sitting in that back pew, scribbling names in pencil into her holy Bible, okay? She knew what she was doing, but she also liked going to church. So we can't deny them that, all right? A lot of folks are like, so anti-church and anti-Bible, and for good reason. I understand it. This was used as a tool of oppression. But what they're not understanding is that that tool of oppression has a lot of good juju in it. And our ancestors were all the wiser. They knew it, so they used it. Those who couldn't read were still able to use it. So one thing that in hoodoo books written by folks outside of our culture, they always focus on the Psalms. The Psalms, okay? Books written about hoodoo in the Bible, Psalms. Now, that's not to say we don't know how to work Psalms. We do. We work them. But they neglect to pay attention to what most black folks were doing with the Bible and hoodoo. They were also using the New Testament, okay? And the reason why that is because we got to go back. We got to go back to plantation times, slavery times, all right? It wasn't uncommon for slave owners to pick a slave or two and teach them how to read the Bible because they wanted them to be able to minister to the rest of the slaves on the plantation. Okay, and they were always being watched, during these, services on the plantation. They were being watched and monitored. But when they weren't being watched, what those old slave preachers would do is give these slaves short little Bible verses, okay, mainly from the New Testament, but sometimes from the Psalms as well, and have them memorize them because they couldn't write and read, but they could memorize what was being told to them. And they knew how to work their hoodoo, their juju, with these simple verses, okay? They knew how to work them. So that's the part of our hoodoo history that a lot of these outsiders are ignorant of, okay? Because they don't have any black elders or ancestors to tap them in and, show them these things. And what I thought was really interesting with this hoodoo book that I mentioned before, they wanted to relegate hoodoo as just a system of folk magic that has no spiritual tradition, no spiritual path, isn't a religion, yada, yada, yada. But they included a whole ass chapter on ancestors. Now, how does that work exactly? Okay, ancestral reverence in and of itself is a spiritual practice. More and more of us are tuning into that, but we're tuning into it in a different way than our predecessors did because we've always done it. Our people have always done ancestral reverence. They just did not use those words. Okay? They didn't. So that's why a lot of younger folk have a hard time talking to elders of tradition because elders of tradition don't use the same words that we are using today so freely, all right, and unapologetically, I might add. They don't resonate with those words, y'all. They resonate with the practices themselves, but 9 times out of 10, they're doing Lord's work. They're just doing the Lord's work. The Lord's work, spiritual work, the work, period. They don't want to hear nothing about no ancestor, nothing. They don't want to hear nothing about no hoodoo or no voodoo or nothing like that. So please don't approach them with those words, all right? Or you will get shut down. And the reason why they don't like those words, well, I'll tell you why. After freedom and emancipation of our enslaved ancestors came about, life was very, very difficult for Black folks in America. Very, very difficult. All right? If you read slave narratives, you will see several where they said, man, I wished I was back on the plantation because life was so rough for me. Okay? Because they had what? Guaranteed meals. They had a guaranteed roof over their heads. All right? And they had a sense of community. All right? But after freedom, they were just kind of all scattered about. It was difficult for them to have regular work. They had to deal with the lynch mobs and the KKK and all the terrorists from the white folks in the town who hated them. You know, at that time, white people were hunting and lynching Black people as a leisurely sport. Okay? So times were very rough for Black folks post-emancipation. All right. And then you would have, white business owners who were like, okay, I'll hire me, a one or two of them Black folk. But that would be it. But you got a whole group of Black folks that need jobs. So what do you think happened? Black folks started hoodooing each other. Okay. They started laying tricks on one another for survival. They were in survival mode. Competition was fierce. Here you are over here with not a pot to piss in, nor a window to throw it out of. And you find out old Jack over yonder got a lead on this job that, old white Mr. Wiggins over here is about to, so what you gonna do? You're gonna juju old Jack down there so that old white Wiggins will hire you instead. Okay? If you're a woman and your man got caught up with the lynch mob or he ran off or whatever, and you're alone and you've got children to feed, and it's difficult for you to make ends meet, okay, and you're being harassed, probably sexually assaulted by all these men, white men, they looking at your teenage son, like, yeah, we're going to get him. We're going to get him because every Sunday they have their lynching parties. And you're afraid. You need a strong man in your household to protect you, okay, to help you make ends meet, whatever the case may be, all right? Being a Black woman alone and afraid is not a good look. So what are you going to do? You might break up another couple to get that man to come to you. Is that a bad thing? Yes, but it was done for survival. Okay, please understand that. So that is how hoodoo became the negative way of calling our work. Okay, so a lot of these good folks are like, oh no, I don't do that hoodoo. That's of the devil. That's that witchcraft. That's Satan shit, blah, 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 blah. But at the same time that they were doing that, they were still doing the same work. Just maybe not for the same reasons, but they were still doing them blessings, y'all. They were still doing them healings. They were still doing them protections. They were still doing them spiritual baths. They were still doing them holy oil anointings. They were still honoring ancestors. They were still doing all of it. So that's why when you talk to Black folk of a certain age, they will motherfuck the word hoodoo. They will motherfuck the word voodoo. Okay, but that doesn't mean they weren't actually doing it. All right? So I've said before, if you read any books about Black life in the 20th century, particularly if the time is set prior to the 60s, 1960s, you'd be hard-pressed to not find anything in those stories that deal with hoodoo. I'm talking root working, root doctrine, or conjure, because to me, those are all three separate things under the broad umbrella of hoodoo. All right? You'd be hard-pressed not to find anything. These things aren't put on the covers. They're not in the titles because the focus isn't just one part of the Black experience. Hoodoo is the entirety of the Black American experience. Okay? So all this, separating it out from Black culture is really an exercise in futility. It really is, because it's such a strong part of our culture. Okay? So this is me pushing back on all those anti-black folks who want to say we don't have a culture, we don't have our religion, we don't have our own spiritual tradition. What we do is called hoodoo. Okay? And I'm going to say it right here. I declare that every black African descended person who is a descendant of enslaved Africans on this here land, United States of America, you belong to the tribe of Hoodoo. It does have a religion. It is a spiritual path. It is a tradition. It has its own culinary, okay? The way we do our food, Hoodoo. The way we do our hair, Hoodoo. The way we create and make, Hoodoo. All right? The way we do everything, Hoodoo. Okay? It's everywhere that black people are. It doesn't matter where we go. It doesn't matter how we speak. It doesn't matter how we look. Our shared experiences here in this land, that's a testimony to Hoodoo. Okay? Now, I want to talk a little bit about something that I said on my interview with a little juju. And that was, I said 6 things that Elder Dr. Katrina Hazard wrote in her book, Mojo Workin', that would establish Hoodoo back to its rightful glory as a religious practice. All right. And I misspoke. I look back in my book and it's actually 8 things. All right. So I'm going to go through that list of 8 things here and expand on them a little bit. If I run out of time, if I get cut off on this here thing, there will be a part 2. All right, so look out for that. Okay, now if you don't have Mojo Workin', the Old African American Hoodoo by Dr. Katrina Hazard, I urge you to get a copy of it. My copy is from Amazon. I use Kindle app on my iPad, so that's how I have it. But you can also get the print edition as well. All right, so I'm going to run through this list here. And she calls this the African religion complex. And these are 8 components shared by all African ethnic groups in the American slave population. All right, so this is the basis or foundation of Hoodoo, the religion. Ready? Number 1, counterclockwise sacred circle dancing. All right, so you probably heard me talk about the ring shout before. You probably heard me talk about the Congo cosmogram, or Yawa, or Dakunga as it sometimes is known. And anybody that's had a black church experience, you know, you see people get the ghosts, or AKA get mounted by our African ancestors or divine forces in nature. One of the behaviors that you will see is a person or persons, because sometimes it's even more than one, they will get up and run around the congregation in a counterclockwise fashion. Now, if you've ever sat in them pews while somebody's running around, you feel that, you feel that ashe, you feel that energy, you feel that good juju. Oh, yes, you do. It might get you caught up, too, and your ass might get up and start running around. But you will definitely feel the energy shift, is what I'm trying to say. All right? Because in the middle of that is the apex of the power. It's the dividing line between the physical world and the world of our spirits, right? Right there in the middle. That's where the master of the crossroads resides, right? He's the one that has 1 foot in our world and 1 foot in the ancestral realm, all right? So you feel it. You can't help but feel it, all right? So that's where that is. People who have been to my home before in my open rituals will be familiar with the marking that I make on the floor, and we ambulate around, and whatever we're doing for that particular time will be in the center, whether it's objects or whether it's persons that need specific things done, like cleansings and healings, all right? And we ambulate around, we clap, we stomp our feet, maybe somebody's playing drums, maybe not, but we get good energy going when we walk the Dakenga. That's what I call it, okay, walking the Dakenga. So that is a part, all right? But guess what? It's already in the black church, right? So score 1 for black folks. Number 2, spirit possession. I just touched on that, all right? Usually what happens when people are doing that, like I said, for the folks that get possessed and start running around the congregation, it's the people who are sitting inside that circle who might also, like a spontaneous reaction, might also get mounted, right? And they might get up and join those running around, or they'll just stay where they are and start, speaking that what quote unquote gibberish, or speaking in tongues, or, they shake, they gyrate, they writhe, they fall out sometimes, whatever the case may be. But usually when they come out of these things, something has shifted. They either get a healing, they get a blessing, they get a vision, they prophesy, whatever the case may be, okay? Their powers are heightened after that experience, all right? When you look at different cultures, diaspora cultures and continental African cultures, what you'll find is that spirit possession is encouraged, all right? It's encouraged by playing the drums of certain spirits. They have specific drum songs and patterns, so especially if you're trying to call down ancestors and you're using wood that came from the trees of the ancestral groves, or you're using wood that came from the trees of those divine forces, shrines and groves, okay? That's important, okay? So that's why the wood, is used to make those particular drums. But the song and the patterns of those drum beats are very key to specific forces. And so they sing these drum songs or play these drum songs to invite those spirits in, all right? To commune, to fellowship, to bless, to heal, to prophesy, or whatever, all right? And usually someone is mounted by that spirit. But sometimes this same phenomena can be witnessed unintentionally, all right? And a really great example of that is in a video clip on YouTube by this filmmaker who made a film called Rise, R-I-Z-E. And it was about a group of young Black folks in Memphis, Tennessee who were crumping dancers. All right. And what this filmmaker did was compare and contrast the dancing styles of these young Black folks to the dancing styles of African people in West and West Central Africa. All right. And the similarities are crazy. All right. And I've seen a lot of folks on social media kind of do the same thing. The footworking that we do here in Chicago and elsewhere. Well, there have been people who've taken videos of Black American folks doing footworking and putting them alongside folks doing Zulu dancing, for example. Okay. And the movements are identical. Okay. One of my favorites is one of this little boy. He had to be about, 5, 6 years old. And he's doing, what they call the Holy Ghost dance in church. Okay. And I posted that video, and then in my comments, I posted the same video of a bunch of small African children in a line doing the same kind of dance. Okay, they were honoring their ancestors doing the same kind of dance. The footwork was identical, okay? Except this little boy in America was moved by the ancestors to do it, all right? But the moves are similar, all right? So, spirit possession, going back to that film clip in Rise, one of the crumpers, it was a woman, young woman. She was doing her little dance, and all of a sudden, she started getting wobbly, right? Her eyes started rolling to the back of her head, and she looked like she was going to faint. And so one of the young brothers and this other brother held her up, and the filmmaker was like, "What's going on? What happened to her?" And the young brother said, "Oh, she got struck. She'd been struck. That's what we all been waiting on. She struck." And when he said that, that's what we all been waiting on. And that she was struck. And then they went and, cut away to an African priest in Africa making the same kind of movements, getting wobbly, right? And then he was lifted up and carried by his tribesmen because he had been mounted by a spirit. It's the same thing, all right? It's the same thing. So spirit possession. Number 3, the principle of sacrifice. Whoa. Now, how does that fit in? Once again, this is something that Black folks have been doing all along. A lot of Black folks had to slaughter their own animals to survive, okay? For folks that grow up in the rural parts of the United States, I salute you, because you still do, okay? But, as folks move out of the country, we get, kind of cut off from all of that, all right? And it's discouraged, all right? But the blood is powerful. There's power in the blood, all right? But it's not only ritual animal sacrifice that we have to consider when we talk about sacrifice. There's all kinds of sacrifices, okay? Monetary sacrifices, food sacrifices, time sacrifices, comfort sacrifices. There's all kinds of sacrifices. Listen, if you're on a strict budget and you go to the grocery store and you buy enough food to feed your family, but you cook a little food to get